Hey everyone, it's Eddie Kalegi reminding you that each and every episode of Sports Speak is powered by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a one-stop shop for tickets to concerts, sporting events, and so much more. And now you can use the promo code SportsSpeak on the site to get $20 off your first purchase. So what are you waiting for? SeatGeek, let there be live. And now on to the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sports Speak Live, episode 189. Eddie Kalegi here with you. Not Tim Moore, though. He's a little under the weather, so I pulled Alec Crouthamel out to join us as our co-host today, and we have a lot to talk about. I'm in a very good mood, so is Alec, because both of our baseball teams are into the championship series. The Mets on an improbable run. The Yankees a bit more expected. We're going to talk about that and preview the two Game 5s coming up tonight and tomorrow afternoon between the Dodgers and the Padres and the Guardians and the Tigers. I'm going to talk a little Thursday night football as well, because Alec is a Seahawks fan, and Seattle did not look too good in their NFC West battle against a very vulnerable and a very banged up 49ers team. But let's talk about the Sports Speak Fantasy Football League first, because I'm 2-3. I'm actually surprised how well I'm doing. I had a crazy week the one time because I picked up Jawan Jennings and he dropped 46 for me. He's not very good anymore, but my team's finding a way. At least I'm not as bad as Zoe or Trapper or Drew. Trapper's team is just a disaster. He was finally able to get rid of Blake Corum, though, so he has a running back in Rico Dowdle that's actually going to play for him now, so that's at least a positive. Alexi, how is your team looking?
Actually, quite good. I mean, Thursday Night Football got me 43 points thanks to Geno Smith, Kenny Walker, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. I didn't realize I had three Seahawks on my starting lineup. My team's 4-1. I beat up on poor Tropper last week by about 40 points. My team's looking really good, even with Jonathan Taylor out. I still have, I still have Jahmyr Gibbs as well as Kenny Walker and J.K. Dobbins to start. So my team's looking pretty good. Even with the injuries, still down Isaiah Pacheco, still down Cooper Kupp, and still down T.J. Hawkinson. I mean, this team is just found a way.
I know. Well, one team that is not finding a way right now are the Seattle Seahawks. Your team, so let's talk about them. Bad last 2 weeks. A choke job in a very winnable game at home against the Giants when the Giants, you had a 100-yard fumble return for a touchdown, and then you end up losing the game. And then on short rest, have to play the Niners, which is never an easy test. But I mean, the Niners are still without Christian McCaffrey, who's seen all his doctors in Germany. And despite all that, the Seahawks just couldn't overcome it. And after what was a really promising 3-0 start, three straight really bad losses.
Yeah, it's becoming increasingly clear that the roster is just not at the level of contending team that maybe people thought, including myself. And the biggest and the most apparent, the two most apparent position groups is offensive line and linebacker. The offensive line has been a disaster, partially due to lack of investment, partially due to injury. Abe Lucas still hasn't come back. We honestly don't know if he's going to come back from that knee injury he suffered last year. The guard play has also not been very good. Stone Forsythe he's been way down and then partially up. He's been okay, but he's also been really bad. And then Laken Tomlinson at left guard hasn't been very good. If you follow me on Twitter, I've railed against almost weekly now Anthony Bradford at right guard about how Christian Haynes, the third round pick from UConn, should be starting there. And I think they need to choose at this point because they've rotated Haynes in at certain points and Bradford, he's just not the answer. It's the lack of investment in that offensive line that's really concerning. Charles Cross has been the lone bright spot, and you would expect that as a top 10 pick at left tackle. He's been very good. But at the same time, Nick Bosa last night, 14 pressures against this offensive line. And that's the second time that the Seattle offensive line has allowed a player to have over 10 pressures in a game. So that's been it has been a disaster. And then you look at the linebacking core. I mean, Terrell Dodson, Tyrese Knight, and Jerome Baker, they've done admirably well, but it's just not enough and not enough investment in this offensive line. And when you look back at some of the transactions and the money that was given out by Seattle in free agency, you could have found $10 million somewhere annually to give to Jordan Brooks to bring him back. He was burgeoning into that star in the middle on defense, not at the same level as Bobby Wagner, obviously, but looking pretty good as one of those premier middle linebackers. Now he's in Miami, and they lost Bobby Wagner too, who, granted, I say is kind of washed, but that's still an experienced guy in the second level that you can put out there. And it's been injuries too. And I know this is a bit of a tangent, and I know it might seem like a bit of an excuse. I hate when the NFL does this 3 games in 11 days thing for teams where you have a team play on Monday Night Football, and then you play them on Sunday, and then you play them on Thursday. I hate it. It just it spits in the face of player safety because you're having these guys go out 3 games in 11 days. Again, it's just not useful or helpful at all. And they've been injured too. I mean, Uchenna Nwosu is a difference maker when he's out there. Boye Mafe, who was back thankfully last night, is all another difference maker. They were down Tariq Woolen, who he had a rough sophomore season, but he's looked good to start out his third year, was out as well. So it's just it's a combination of a lot of things. I think John Schneider's roster building has come into a lot more of a question now that he is the main decision maker, aside from Pete Carroll, who was that kind of 1A, 1B type guy with John Schneider. So there's a lot of problems that are coming out of the Seahawks team. I mean, the defense just hasn't been there. They've been getting gashed in the run game. It's a combination of injuries, some poor technique, I would say. And as well as just lack of investment in certain positions that you need. I mean, Byron Murphy, I haven't even talked about him, the first rounder that they drafted this year. He was really good in his limited action. He's been out too. So it's not going to be easy for Seattle. They're 3-3. They're tied for the division lead with San Francisco, but obviously they have the tiebreaker with the win last night. Next up for them, it's going to be in Atlanta next Sunday. They get 10 days off, thankfully. That I think Seattle could be favored in that, but it's never easy going on the road, especially the way Atlanta's offense has been playing. You host the Bills a week later. That's going to be a really tough game. And then you also, the next week, host the Rams, who they might be dead in the water, but Sean McVay has historically owned the Seahawks. And then you have a bye week, and then you go to San Francisco on November 17th to take on the 49ers again. So it doesn't get much easier for the Seahawks. And this next stretch that I just talked about is really going to determine whether the Seahawks could maybe sprout as a wild card contender in Mike McDonald's first year, or if they'll flame out and go, say, 7-10.
Yeah, I think there's a real shot still because again, the NFC still is very wide open, but there are a couple of teams that have definitely surprised this year. I'm not even going to talk about my Eagles right now because they're 2-2. They better beat Massage Man on Sunday and then go from there because they have a very manageable next few games. Browns, Giants, Bengals, Jags. None of those four teams have looked very good this year. If you cannot get 3 wins at least out of those games, you have serious problems and again have to question the coaching. But two teams have really surprised this year in the Commanders and the Vikings. Let's talk about Minnesota first. So Sam Darnold lights up again in London, and the defense has been spectacular. Brian Flores, after all the critiques of his coaching this offseason, he goes and becomes maybe the best defensive coordinator in the league with, I don't feel like a ton of talent, a good unit, but not a great one. But the story of that game, obviously, is what transpired on Tuesday because the Jets get rid of Robert Saleh. And shockingly, after it seemed like Aaron Rodgers had control of everything that was happening there, this was not an Aaron Rodgers decision. This was a Woody Johnson decision to get rid of him, but they keep Nathaniel Hackett, but they demote him from OC, and they make Jeff Holdridge the new head coach, and he gets promoted from DC. So now you're going to have a new head coach, OC, and DC heading into your next matchup. And don't know. I mean, I don't think Robert Saleh was a great coach, but somebody had to take the fall for the fact that Aaron Rodgers is washed and it wasn't going to be Aaron Rodgers. And Saleh, unfortunate for him, and it's ridiculous that they had to get security to remove him and everything. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I just don't like the timing. It really does feel like Salah was a scapegoat. I mean, I think this is the first time, at the very least, I think the first time under Woody Johnson's ownership that they fired a coach midseason. And I don't think Salah was doing that badly. At the very least, I don't think he was doing things that will magically get remedied with Jeff Ulbrich as the new head coach, or at least the interim for now. I mean, the defense. That's Salah's calling card. The defense has been very good. I believe they ranked first in DVOA in defense since 2022. So Salah's unit has held up his end of the bargain. Now the offense, it's like, what more can you do on offense when you have Aaron Rodgers running things all over the place? You bring in Randall Cobb and you bring in Alan Lazard, his good friends. You bring in Nathaniel Hackett, another one of his good friends. I mean, you know you're down bad on offense when you think Todd Downing is an upgrade over what you currently have. He was a complete disaster in Tennessee, and now he's going to be the play caller. Will he be better? I don't know. His red zone numbers were always good. How much of that can you attribute to Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee? I don't know because I mean Derrick Henry very well might be a Hall of Famer. I think he should be, and I just don't know what's going to change that. I just don't know what difference is going to make. Maybe they get a boost because this NFL teams seem to get at least a small boost, at least in one game, when you fire a coach and bring in an interim. But the thing that sticks out to me is no team has ever fired their head coach and made the playoffs in the Super Bowl era. You could say John Gruden, but he resigned, and that wasn't really due to performance reasons when Rick Bisaccia took over and led the Raiders to the playoffs. But I just don't know what is going to change here that isn't already in place. I mean, it seems like Ulbrich has a really good relationship with the players. Discipline was kind of always discipline and preparedness, I would say, whereas always kind of an issue with Saleh. They committed a lot of penalties, particularly at the line of scrimmage. It didn't seem like they came out very strong, but the defense was really good, and that's where Saleh kind of had his best work, and that's what he's known for. So I don't really know what changes here. Now, I don't know if Todd Downing's an upgrade at play caller either. I guess we'll wait and see.
I mean, my whole thing too is like I don't think Salah's a great coach. I really don't. And the defense has been, I think, a little overrated at times. They did not look good in the opener against San Francisco. They have looked better the last few weeks. But, you know, Robert Saleh can't control the fact that Aaron Rodgers is 40 years old, can barely move, looks like he gets hurt every single game now, and threw 3 picks against the Vikings, including a terrible final drive in that game in London. So, somebody had to take the fall, and it wasn't going to be the quarterback that they traded their future away for, and traded for a bunch of ridiculous pieces that don't fit on the team to please for, but like it's just a bad situation all around for the Jets. We'll see if they turn it around, but I do not see any sort of Rich Bisaccia, Antonio Pierce magic with Jeff Ulbrich, and unfortunately. And I'm not saying it's because he's a bad coach. I just feel like there's a bad fit there. Breece Hall has taken a major step back this year. The offensive line is still questionable. Aaron Rodgers is 40 years old. Garrett Wilson is good, but still to me hasn't really separated himself as a superstar receiving talent. And besides that, you got what? Alan Lazard and Mike Williams, a couple of old guys. I mean, it's not really something that's sustainable. Something I want to ask you if it's going to be sustainable, though. We got this DMV showdown. Woody Silverstein has been telling me all about this game on Sunday. Commanders Ravens, and Washington is 4-1, is playing a college style offense with the reigning Heisman winner in Jaden Daniels, who right now looks like arguably the most prolific quarterback in the NFL and has to face Lamar Jackson, whose offense just dropped 41 points on the Bengals and managed to beat them when Joe Burrow threw for 5 scores. So that should be a shootout and a fun one. But I mean, how much longer can the Commanders keep this up? Because this is crazy.
I mean, honestly, it's reached a level of I'm just gonna believe in them until they prove me otherwise at this point because I really didn't think that they were all that good. I thought they had the weirdest free agency class of all time, where they just brought in a bunch of like kind of sort of washed veterans on like 1 or 2 year deals, but it's working. And Jaden Daniels, I think, has taken a major step forward. One of the biggest questions about him was, is he going to make the right decisions, especially when it comes to running the football? Because if you look back at some of his, well, I guess lowlights at LSU, you saw he took a lot of big hits in kind of cartoonishly hilarious fashion. He really hasn't done that. He's been really smart when he's carrying it. And I mean, he's just been able to make a lot of really good plays. I think this is going to be a really interesting game because it's going to be two teams. The Ravens are kind of looking to find their footing while the Commanders are still trying to continue that next step that they're on. I think this will be a really. I don't think the Commanders are going to win this game. I think the Ravens do pull this one out because the Commanders' defense has struggled this year. Um, but it's not going to go down without a fight, I don't think. I think the Commanders are really going to make this one close. I mean, Terry McLaurin has kind of re-blossomed into that star that everyone thought he was going to take the next step, but unfortunately, the Commanders just never got that quarterback for him. It seems like they have one now. The two have really good chemistry. Even De'Ami Brown has looked pretty good at times. Luke McCaffrey, a rookie. It's just all of these weapons have looked pretty good. Now, I believe they're going to be down Brian Robinson, so that's definitely going to hurt their running game for sure. And that's also why I think the Ravens are going to pull this one out. But I mean, again, Cliff Kingsbury, they always start hot and we're still in that beginning portion of the season. So I'm going to keep believing in them until they start losing games. And I think it does start here. I do think they fall in this one. But I mean, again, they haven't given me a reason to not believe in them yet.
But you made a very important point there. Your coaching staff is led by Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn, who are the epitome of starting strong and crashing and burning. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But 4-1, I think any Washington fan will take that after basically what the last 25 years of Washington Redskins football team, Commanders football has been. But that's the real stories in the NFL. We got to get to the Major League Baseball postseason, and I got to talk about the OMG Grimace Mets. By the way, the Grimace remix dropped with Pitbull. It is fire. Excuse me, the OMG remix, not the Grimace
The
remix.
Grimace remix.
They need to do that next if they win another series. But that's just how excited I am, Alec, because Francisco Lindor is clutch as can be. I just want to say Shohei Ohtani is definitely the best player in Major League Baseball and the best offensive player. But if you go by the book definitional rule of the most valuable player, based on who provides the most value to their team, it's Francisco Lindor. Because Lindor has led all three ninth inning, all three rallies for the Mets to get of course, the home run against the Braves to get them into the playoffs, started the rally that led to the Pete Alonso home run when they were trailing by two in the ninth in the elimination game against the Brewers. And then, of course, the game-winning grand slam in front of the Citi Field faithful the other night to send the Mets to the NLCS for the first time since 2015. I don't know if there's anybody more valuable in baseball right now than Francisco Lindor, especially when you consider we didn't even know if he was going to play in the playoffs after he was dealing with the back issue the last 2 weeks of the regular season, found his way back and has not missed a beat. The rest of the team, though, has been sensational. I heavily criticized the signing of Luis Severino. I thought he was washed. He has been a very good innings eater. Nobody beats Sean Manaea. He has been the best pitcher on the staff. David Peterson is now a reliever and has become one of the best bullpen arms in these playoffs. Edwin Diaz is shaky, but he's been able to get it done every appearance except for one over these last 2 weeks. And the rest of the offense, Mark Vientos, sensational. The 2-homer game against the Phillies at the bank. Pete Alonso, 3 homers. Nimmo looks good. Jeff McNeil might be back soon. I kind of don't really want him to play, but we'll see. Jose Iglesias, OMG. Candelita, incredible. The entire roster. This is a magical run. When I was on this show last time, I said, Mets are playing with house money. I don't care how far they go. Now that you're the Final Four, take advantage of this terrible playoff format that favors teams like the Mets and like the Phillies 2 years ago and go all the way, just like Texas and Arizona last year. No matter who you get, Padres or Dodgers, nobody wants to face the Grimace Mets right now. The power of Grimace, the power of the pumpkin. Let's go, baby. Let's get another one.
Yeah, I mean, it's been unbelievable. And I want to talk about Sean Manaea as well. I mean, his career was kind of on the verge of being over. He had a couple of 5 ERA seasons when he was in San Diego and San Francisco. And then he ended up, things looked better in the second half of his season with San Francisco. After the 2022 season, I believe, he started going to driveline to try to get his velocity back up. And that's kind of what sparked his career resurgence. He comes to the Mets, kind of lowers his arm slot a little bit as well, gets a little bit more sidearm action. And it really has been fooling hitters. I mean, his sinker and slider combination has been playing extremely well. I mean, I didn't see this coming. I didn't think Manaea, I thought he was going to be a good piece. I drafted him in fantasy baseball for that reason. I thought he'd be like a good third rotation piece, but I didn't think he was capable of becoming the best arm in the staff. And I mean, the hitting, I mean, you said it yourself, just so many clutch performances. I also want to talk about how poorly the Phillies hit. I mean, it just did not look like they had an approach for the entire series. Um, Guys outside of Castellanos and Harper, I think batted like 100. I think they went 13 for 100 in that 4-game series, aside from Castellanos and Harper. I mean, it was a bad struggle throughout the series, and now it's a gut check offseason for the Phillies because they're still looking to take that next step after going, to the World Series 2 years ago. What moves are they going to make? They have some impending free agents. They got to shore up that bullpen. They also really struggled. Really, the only bright spot in that series was Zach Wheeler. And I guess you could say the rest of the rotation as well, but Zach Wheeler. And the fact that you lost that start kind of set things off on a bad path. So it's going to be an interesting offseason for the Phillies.
Yeah, it is. Especially, and again, it proves this format. This format is terrible. It just is. There is such a disadvantage. This is a momentum sport. There's such a disadvantage to sitting there for a week and letting these wild card teams get hot. We saw it with the Phillies 2 years ago. We saw it with the D-backs last year, and we're seeing it right now with the Mets and potentially with the San Diego Padres as well. So we'll see how it goes. It creates a lot of excitement. It creates a lot of juice. I feel like in general, the Major League Baseball playoffs are drawing a lot more eyeballs than they have in the last few years, which is a good sign to try to help grow the game. Because even though the regular season might not matter too much, it feels like the baseball postseason, a lot of people are tuning in that don't really watch Major League Baseball regularly, and that's something they really need. College basketball. We love college basketball. A lot of people will just tune in for March Madness. Baseball at this point has become a regional sport, but we need the nation tuning in for the Major League Baseball playoffs. And this format, the only thing I'll give it is that it has made things a lot more exciting. It's made me happy as a Met fan. And last thing I'll say on the Mets, this is probably my favorite team I've gotten to root for. Like, as a Mets, Eagles, Nets fan, I've seen some good things. I loved watching the Nets with KD and Kyrie. The Eagles, of course, making it to the Super Bowl a couple of years, winning the Super Bowl in 2017. But just so many underdogs, so many likable pieces on this Mets team. And the fact that they've been able to pull it together through the power of Grimace after being 11 games under 500 is just sensational. And credit to Carlos Mendoza, who spent years as an assistant with the Yankees, so he knows the winning mentality, finally gets the shot to be the head guy as the manager of a Major League Baseball team, goes to the crosstown rival and has done an impeccable job, has really been smart to me overall managing the bullpen compared to past Mets managers, namely Luis Rojas and Buck Showalter. And I mean, he's doing it with not a lot. The Mets bullpen does not have many reliable arms right now, and he has still found a way to put the pieces together. So all the credit in the world to him. But let's go to the Yankees. They are also moving on to the ALCS as they often do. Got past the Royals in 4 games. A little shaky at the start of the series. Giancarlo didn't look good, but as Bob Costas said, it's not his fault. And then he had a good game in game 3. Aaron Judge still sucks in the playoffs, but Garrett Cole doesn't. And the team in general pieced it together and got by a feisty Kansas City team in 4 games. So, what's the vibe for the Yankees as they prepare for a ALCS against either the Guardians or the Tigers?
Yeah, I mean, this is what they expected as the one seed in the entire American League. This is what was expected. And I think Giancarlo Stanton, despite his struggles to early on, has to be the MVP for this series. I mean, he propelled them to a victory in game 3, and then in game 4 gets another hit or two to win that series, win the series, basically. I mean, there's not much else you could say. I want to say a contender for MVP. Surprisingly enough, I think it's got to be Aaron Boone. I mean, he managed his butt off in that series. He pressed all the right buttons, especially in the bullpen. He was aggressive as well. He asked Luke Weaver to get a lot of outs, especially I think they had to pitch 3 days in a row or 3 games in a row, so not 3 days in a row. But he got over 3 outs in game 3 and then got the last 3 in game 4. He pressed all the right buttons with Clay Holmes as well. I know people have been critical, I should say, of Clay Holmes, rightfully so at times, but he was excellent in this series. I mean, he looked sharp once again. He got a 1-2-3 inning in the eighth. I know I thought about bringing him back out for the ninth, but Aaron Boone let Luke Weaver do his stuff, and that's exactly what he did. I mean, Aaron Boone has got to be a contender for MVP in the series. He did an excellent job managing everything. I would have liked to see a little bit more decisions with the bench, maybe, namely getting Jason Dominguez some action. But I mean, when you manage a bullpen as well as Boone did, I'll let that slide. And they obviously won too, so I'll let a lot of things slide. Next up, I mean, the Guardians winning game 4 yesterday was a best case scenario for the Yankees because if the Tigers win, they're throwing out Tariq Skubal, I believe, tomorrow. So if the Tigers win, they'll be without Skubal. And then, I mean, the Guardians are also going to have a bit of a depleted rotation slash bullpen because they're throwing out their best guys in that winner take all game. So I think the expectation is that the Yankees should be favored no matter who they play. They've managed the Guardians fairly well late in the season. They struggled a little bit against them. The Tigers, they kind of struggled a little bit against too, and the Tigers are a complete wild card, for lack of a better term, in this postseason. They have a TBD half the time when it's not Skubal for who's going to pitch. So I think the Yankees should be favored in this series. And I like you said, Aaron Judge really needs to step up. He got off to a good start. He had some hard hit balls yesterday in particular. He had a couple walks. He had that rocket double off the wall. So I think things are trending in the right direction. The pitching stepped up, like you said. Garrett Cole is a playoff riser. Last 2 years, he's really shown that. Or last 2 postseasons, I'll say he's really shown that in his reputation. Rodon looked really good to start, and then things kind of tailed off. I think Luis Heel, we'll see a start from him. We'll see if he's ready for the spotlight. But I'm optimistic about the Yankees. I think their World Series is near. I think they should be favored, and I think they have the pieces to do it. Juan Soto has definitely shown up in this postseason. Jazz Chisholm, amid all the boos, didn't have a great postseason, but he made some big plays. I mean, things are starting to come together for the Yankees. I think they should be the favorite out of the American League as the one seed.
Well, let's wrap this with some quick predictions for those 2 game 5s. Starting tonight, back and forth series between the Dodgers and Padres. San Diego looked to be in a good position when they really stole all the momentum in game 3, but the Dodgers bouncing back even without Freddie Freeman. Ohtani and Betts have looked good in this series. The Dodgers rotation, as always, is questionable no matter how many pitchers they trade for or sign. But San Diego's finding a way. Yu Darvish has looked pretty good too, and Fernando Tatis Jr. has been the best hitter this postseason, I'd say, besides Francisco Lindor. So, who do you think is going to come out of this one tonight?
I mean, it's really tough because both teams are going to be throwing the kitchen sink out there. It's going to be Yamamoto versus Darvish tonight, so it's going to be a really exciting matchup. I mean, the star power is there. I'm not sure if we'll see Freddie Freeman. I'm not sure what his status is. It looks like he tweaked his ankle in game 3, so it'll be interesting to see if they have him. But it's hard to bet against either team, honestly, especially since this game is in LA. I'm leaning Padres just because they seem like, I mean, they've just been really good the second half of the season. I think Darvish has a good reputation in the postseason, minus the World Series in 2017, and we kind of know what happened then. Um, I just think it's set up for the Padres to win this one. I think the Padres take it in another one of those back and forth games that LA and San Diego always play. I could definitely see the Dodgers winning this one though, especially with Yamamoto on the mound. He's been dominant at times. I believe this his first playoff start?
Uh, I think I forgot if he started game one, did he? Or I don't know.
I don't remember, but
His
either
first
way,
elimination game for sure.
right, exactly. So I think the Padres get the best of the Dodgers here and for the second time in 3 years and make another NLCS run.
I feel the same way. This Dodgers team can't get past the NLDS no matter who's on that roster besides a 60-game season. I just don't really feel it with this group. And Yamamoto, I think, might get a little rattled even though he's pitching at home. San Diego's got a really difficult lineup, of course, anchored by Tatis, but so many good hitters there too between Jackson Merrill and Manny Machado and Bogarts. It's a deep team, so I'd certainly look out for them. I'm going San Diego. Tomorrow, as you mentioned, Tigers have to throw out Tarek Skubal, who has been the best pitcher in baseball as of late. And as crazy as the Mets run has been, the Tigers even more improbable. Nobody saw them in the playoffs. They get there, they knock out the Astros, who had made the ALCS the previous 7 years, and now have a chance to do the same against the Guardians on the road. They got a 3-run home run from Kerry Carpenter off of Emmanuel Clase, who had allowed 4 earned runs all year to pick up one of their victories, and they've got their ace on the mound. So Tigers Guardians in Cleveland. Who do you have winning that one tomorrow?
Again, it's really hard to bet against Tarek Skubal, but it looks like the Guardians are probably going to go Matthew Boyd for their pitching matchup. Actually, a former Tiger, so that's an interesting storyline to watch. The game got moved up from 8 o'clock to 1 o'clock because of weather in the Cleveland area, so that's another thing to look out for. Even less rest going into this game. I mean, I'm once again, I'm going to believe in Tarek Skubal until I'm proven wrong. And this Tigers bullpen just has so many different options they can play so many different roles. But this Guardians bullpen is almost just as good. I mean, you got Cade Smith, who has been unbelievable all season long. You got Emmanuel Clase, who might have had one of the better reliever seasons ever. Um, it's really a toss up. I'll say Cleveland because they have the experience in the postseason. Granted, not too much more, but they have, I think, the more dominant guys in the back end of the bullpen. But it's going to take a lot, and I don't think the Guardians are going to score more than 1 run until after Skubal's out of the game.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it all shakes out. Should be fun. A couple of game fives in what has been a really, really compelling postseason so far. We'll talk about the playoffs more next week, look at the NFL and the NBA season right around the corner as well. Thanks to Alec Crouthamel for pinch hitting for Tim Moore in this episode. Again, every episode of Sports Speak Live powered by SeatGeek. Use the promo code SportsSpeak, all caps 20, all caps, one word, $20 off your first purchase at checkout. But for Alec, I'm Eddie Kalegi, signing off of Sports Speak Live. Enjoy this weekend of baseball and football, and we'll talk to you next week.